Welcome to On the Edge with April Mahoney Brains. Here, this is the spot where the conversation is pointed, the guests are sharp, and the responses are never dull. Welcome home, Brains. There's only one requirement to hang out on the edge, is that you open your big brain and close your small mind. Did you bring your thinking caps? It's time to put them on, because the conversation starts now. Well, welcome to On the Edge with April Mahoney, Tricia Chandler, and you brains. How you doing? You stopped at the spot, the place, the location, where the conversations are pointed, the guests are sharp, as she is, and the responses are never dull. Tricia's funny. I love her. She does a lot of tongue-in-cheek stuff. We were just talking about her dog and how her dog runs her. But in addition to that, she is the host of an interview talk show that talk to other professionals and therapists about the narcissist. We're going to talk about the narcissist because people dish out that word now like it's $5 bills. And I really want to define that, categorize it, and see how we can heal from it. She works with professional women out of a necessity to help them heal themselves from toxic relationships from, again, that narcissist. And she uses RTT. For those of you that don't know what RTT is, that's Rapid Transformational Therapy. That means we're going to get rid of it quick and slick. So let's welcome her to the show. How are you, Tricia?
Thank you so much, April, for having me. And I'm doing well.
You doing well? Well, good.
Yeah.
I'm at the top of my game too. I'm pretty excited. I got a lot of good stuff going on, and I'm really proud of women and the way that we are mobilizing these days, and we are not letting our voices be suppressed, and that we are not going to be run or dictated to or controlled by narcissists. So
That's
tell
right.
us a little bit about you, your story, your journey, and how you picked this particular zone of genius.
Well, I think, as many of us that work in this sphere, I came by this area of expertise the honest way because I was a victim of it myself. And, therein lies my authenticity, I suppose you might say. It's what I know because it's what I've experienced, and I've also studied it at length. So that's kind of how I came to it. And, the bigger piece is that I didn't even know I was being abused when I was in the relationship. And that sounds a little bit crazy, but when you really understand how the subconscious mind works, then you really kind of understand that the mind seeks what is familiar, and it's what we call one of the rules of the mind. You find in this abusive, toxic person something familiar, something strangely feels safe or quote normal to you in this relationship. And there's a reason for that. And it's typically because of some kind of garbage that happened in your childhood, your early experiences in life.
Right. I was going to ask you that, is that the symptom of epigenetics? I've been really studying that, and I didn't realize what a close connection it had to nutrition. But it's what you feed yourself, be it your language, your emotions, surroundings,
all of that.
So
you'll find that a lot of people that are narcissists, and by that I'm referring specifically to somebody that's actually got narcissistic personality disorder, which is a mental illness, a delusional mental illness, not dissimilar from psychopathy. It's along that kind of cluster B of mental health range. And you'll find that people that are in that category, and it is a spectrum disorder. So some people are mild, some people are severe. That it almost seems
that with that liquid courage,
right? Yes. There's a lot of addiction that goes along with it too. Drug addiction and porn addiction, alcoholism, all of that. But you'll find that people that are on this spectrum, it is almost like an epigenetic thing. It's a family cult, if you will say. And one person isn't just an isolated case in a family. It's typically like a whole nest of them. There's a toxic mother that abuses the kids, and that mother was also abused by her mother or father. And it goes back all the way to the beginning of time, probably.
Right.
And then you raise children in that environment, they also become that. Is it a temperamental or epigenetic connection, a physical inheritable trait? Possibly. Um, but it's also environment. So I think it's all of those things, it's nurture and nature.
Right. So, what was your aha moment? When did you say enough is enough?
In my case, sometimes the narcissist, the victim actually has to do the leaving. In my case, I was so ingrained in the whole delusion of the thing that I didn't even see what was happening. All I knew was that for a very long time, I had an escalating pattern of anxiety and depression and anxiety attacks, and I felt a lot of shame and guilt and self blame, and I really felt like I would beat myself up all the time for being a completely selfish person, which I now realize is completely not true. It wasn't me all the time. It was him setting me up to believe that. Um, but in my case, he did the leaving, he did the discard. It was the classic narcissist discard. And it came at me out of nowhere. Like literally, I went to the grocery store. Hey, what do you want at the store? He says, oh, don't forget my cereal bars. Okay. Come home from the store, helps me put the groceries away. Everything's normal. And then just like that, his demeanor changed. His eyes went black. His voice shifted. His everything was completely different. And he goes, I got to tell you something. I'm moving out.
Wow.
And I was like, excuse me? Like, what? And then it's so shocking when it comes at you like this. And I kept thinking, he's terrifying to me right now because I'm seeing him as a completely different person. He's behaving different. He sounds different. He looks different. He's walking and talking different.
Mm.
Everything is completely different. And then from that moment forward, things escalated very quickly. And the abuse was no longer, my ex-husband was a covert narcissist, and it became very highly overt. The abuse escalated, and he was clearly getting pleasure from the way he was talking to me and treating me. And in fact, there was one particular conversation I remember having with him toward the end of our interactions before it got completely non-communication. We were sitting on the couch together, and I was expressing something to him, and then he proceeded to give me a whole barrage of just hateful, awful things, like the most hurtful things a person could say to somebody who supposedly they love. And I'm sitting there crying, and I look down, and he has an erection. He was getting off on watching me writhe in pain. And I think shortly thereafter, when I started to really understand what was happening, um, that's when I was able to fully let go of it, but not until I discovered rapid transformational therapy.
Well, tell us how you moved into RTT, how you
Yeah.
found it, and how it
Yeah.
helped.
So after he left, I was circling the drain. I was really planning to end my life. I didn't see any way out of the pain I was in. And I just couldn't imagine my life without this person who I thought that I loved more than, life itself. Even though he was doing awful things to me, I still thought that I loved him. And I had a good friend, and one of my sisters were, terrified I would hurt myself because I was planning to. And they were aware of this. And then they started sending me videos of another RTT therapist who, at the time, I had no idea what she did or anything like that. I just heard her message. And I thought, for some reason, what she was saying to me clicked in my head. And I just said, you know what? She alone understands me. And I know that this woman can help me. And I reached out to her, and we did a session. And I thought, I still didn't even know what it was that she just did to me, or with me is maybe more accurate. And all I know is that in that 3-hour span of time, something in my mind shifted so radically that I walked into my kitchen and I picked up the box of pills that I had on my counter I was planning on taking, and I ran them down the garbage disposal.
Wow.
And that was the beginning of this. And within a couple of months, I was feeling like a completely different person.
Run
It
us
felt
through a little bit, not in detail, but what is the process of RTT? Is it meditative? Is it hypnosis? Do you need a sedative? Tell us a little bit about RTT.
RTT, or rapid transformational therapy, is a combined modality. And by that, I mean it has a basis in Ericksonian hypnosis, but it also has pieces and parts of NLP, which is neuro linguistic programming. It has Gestalt therapy. It has cognitive behavioral therapy, which is the foundation for most modern talk therapy. So there are all these kind of pieces. And what Marissa Peer, who is the developer of RTT, she's been doing this for about 35 years now. Marissa took all the best bits of all the different therapies that she dabbled in over the years and combined them into this protocol, if you will, or treatment which is now called RTT, or rapid transformational therapy. And it really is a brilliant tool, or a series of tools that enables the client to tap into their subconscious mind, because most of these things that you struggle with are held within your subconscious mind. If you think about the brain as two parts, you've got conscious, what you're aware of. I'm choosing to wear my green shirt today. I'm choosing to eat a salad for lunch. Will I go out to dinner, or will I stay home tonight? These are conscious choices that we make. Subconscious thoughts are things that govern your actions that you're not really aware of. Maybe, your eye is twitching, or, you don't consciously say, I think I might grow my fingernails today, or perhaps I'll make my heart beat a little bit faster. These are subconsciously held in the mind and controlled by the mind, the brain, on a subconscious level. And this is where the reasons people are in these relationships and continue to stay in them is held. It's those beliefs that we hold, the emotional attachments to the past that drive us into these relationships. So by using RTT, we can tap into that and basically just eliminate, eradicate, rewire, make different connections, disconnect certain actions from certain beliefs, whatever the case may be.
Wow.
And very quickly we can make those shifts within the mind, and it just changes your response to whatever stimuli you're working on. I mean, it could be, you're afraid of elevators, for example. And then maybe you have one or two sessions, and then all of a sudden you can go up and down an elevator, and you've never done that in your life before, and you feel completely fine with it. Panic attacks, depression, anxiety, any of these things are so easily dealt with.
And it's long lasting.
It's permanent. It's a permanent change. Wow. I mean, I myself have lost 57 pounds in the last number of months using RTT.
Wow.
Just by changing the relationship I have with food and my reactions and conditioning to it.
That is amazing. So now you are a coach?
I am a trauma-informed abuse relationship coach, and I am a rapid transformational therapist.
Trauma-informed. Define that for me. I mean, people don't, when you say trauma-informed, people are aware of the trauma, they're not aware of it. What does that mean?
Well, trauma-informed is more about how you as a coach or a therapist operates rather than the client. The client knows that they have trauma. It's just a set of protocol or guidelines in how we operate with a client. It's more sensitive to their needs. I mean, a lot of traditional therapy almost re-victimizes a client by making them constantly go back and relive all of this junk, right? And if you're constantly rehashing, well, my mother was this, or my, whatever, and it almost just cements that reactionary pattern into the mind. And if you handle it in a trauma-informed, like a lot of it is with RTT, we do go back, we do regress the client to look at things, to find those beliefs and feelings from the past. But especially when somebody's been deeply traumatized, I like to think of it more like sometimes we just walk up near the trauma and maybe we peek at it through the bars. We don't actually look directly at it. Or you're just getting close enough to feel the feelings that you felt when that
And
trauma
you, again, you
occurred.
have an opportunity to reframe it. I share this all the time with
Yes.
my coach. I had a situation that I had run into, and I was talking to my coach, and I'm going, oh my God, here we go again. And she says, well, you have opted to take that choice. You have opted to go down that road again. You know what
Hmm.
happened the last time. It wasn't successful. You should be able to use those tools to reframe it, to re-navigate it, and chart a different course. And I
That's
did that,
exactly it.
and it worked out. It worked out famously. I don't.
Yeah.
People think that when you say recover, that you're going to totally forget. This is
No.
inherent in who you are. You're not going to forget, but how, again, you said how you process it. I'm
Hmm.
going to be 62 here in a couple days, and
Happy birthday.
thank you. But I say to myself, April, some things I don't even care about anymore.
Hmm.
Other things I don't want to pour that energy into, and other things it's like, okay, this is a situation that has happened to me, or has it happened for me? How am I going to process it?
Yeah.
So there's a lot. So now you say that you work with professional women. Do you find that, and I don't want to slice and dice, but do you find that high achiever, E-level, C-level women, entrepreneurs, do they have a different receptor to this? Only because the reason why I say that is because they're already on charge. They're already high voltage.
Hmm.
Um, and not to say that the mother isn't, so moms don't, or the stay-at-home mom, or the teacher or something like that. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is that you've got women that are in these combative situations. For example, the run for president. She's got to be on some sort of mental steroid to keep that pace, to be
Yeah.
able to keep your wits about you, to be able to, you know, edit and filter, bob and weave, come back, be strategic. So there's a different mindset, I think, sometimes with professional women. Do you find
Well,
that?
I think, there's a whole different vibrational level that you're operating at. Um, Not always, but sometimes. I think ultimately, for me, it's about who is willing to really invest in themselves. And I'm not just talking financial investment, but to invest the energy, the thoughts, the time, the effort into yourself to get that return on investment, right? So you're going to really put yourself out there, and this is not magic. And I think that name RTT, or rapid transformational therapy, confuses people, because a lot of folks come in and they think I'm just going to like wave a magic wand over them and then presto changeo, they feel completely different. You have to actually truly believe that change is possible, and you have to truly want it and really put that mental energy into it and invest that back into yourself to get out of it what you want. If you're so stuck in victim mode, which a lot of women come to me and they are so heavily identified with that victimhood that they just struggle to let go of it. And we are less likely to see that with people who are entrepreneurs, professionals who are really already adept at pushing to get what they want.
Mhm, mhm.
So, I mean, I think that's maybe a little bit of what you're getting at with that
Right,
question.
right.
Whereas, and I do work with women who are stay-at-home moms or whatever. But the difference being, there, are they stay-at-home mom and they're separated from or divorced from a person who's been abusing them, or are they still in this relationship?
Mhm.
Because I can't really help somebody that's still getting abused day in and day out. Because anything we do, yes, it will help build up some self-love and some self-worth, and encourage them to make changes. But if they're still being actively abused on a day-to-day basis, it just unwinds that spool that we wound up in the
Right,
session every
right, right,
single
right.
time.
And
So they do.
it depletes the ability for the resilience.
Exactly.
You're not
They're
bouncing
just
back.
getting broken down over and over and over again. And unless you're willing to make that change, I had a discovery call with a woman a couple days ago, and it was just the most heartbreaking thing, because she's sitting there telling me all these things about her life that are so sad and so hard and so horrible. And anything I suggested to her, she would just shut it down and say, well, I can't possibly.
Mhm.
And I thought, I'm sitting here giving you the hugest life raft possible.
Right.
And yet you are so bought into the fact that I am a miserable person that I would rather sit here and wallow in it than make any radical change to what I'm doing. So if you keep doing the same thing you always do, you will get exactly that. But you have to believe that change is possible. You have to truly want change. You have to put yourself out there. You have to really, really, really believe it.
And I tell
It's,
people all the time, you got to do the work. You know, Tricia
yeah,
can give you the pixie dust, but if you don't sprinkle it around
yeah.
and, flutter your wings and try to fly, it's all in vain.
And it is rapid on the scale of therapy, but, because if you're going to a talk therapist, you're going to go every week, a couple times a week. I don't know, probably for years. And, all the time you're just, spending money, spending time, and maybe you're getting better, maybe you're not. Versus, you go to rapid transformational therapy, depending on what you've got going on. It could be one session, it could be 6 sessions, and then that's it. You're done.
Wow.
So,
Are these tools that you are able to look back on and recant if you find yourself in a similar situation? Because
oh, you,
it's not everyone, but so many times people continue the pattern
mhm,
because it's familiar, because it's comfortable.
right.
Even though you've done the work, okay, I'm not with that particular person, but this person still has the same similar traits, but I don't want to see it. I can't see it because I'm looking for validation. I'm looking for love instead of finding that self love.
Mhm. But see, once this, if the client really applies himself and we get at the root cause of all of this, and it's important in the session that the client not only understand what is the root cause of all of this, and they have to extrapolate from there and really understand it on a deep level. And oftentimes with trauma in particular, it peels off in layers, so one session is probably not going to completely fix you. um like, for example, with weight in particular, and that was my experience with it, is that my weight was tied into so many different layers of my own trauma throughout my life that it took me 6 sessions to untangle that. I mean, if you think it's like a big wad of fabric that's stitched together repeatedly and folded and stitched and folded, you can't just take your seam ripper and take out a few stitches and expect it to be completely good, right? You have to keep digging at it. And until you get all of those stitches out of that fabric, you can't smooth it back out again. And that's how it works with trauma. You've got to pick out all those stitches and disconnect everything from everything else so that everything goes back to normal and feels smooth. So that's really kind of how that works with trauma in particular.
Are
It's
you a,
complex.
are you a parent?
I am. I have 2 children.
What was, not going into too deep, but what was the experience for them? Because they observe this, and so many times I hear people say, "Oh, but I don't want to talk in front of the children." Hello, they live there. They know what's going on when
Yeah.
you're not there. They know what's going on when dad's not there. They are impacted by this. A narcissist, I don't, from my experience, I don't think they just pick one particular person. This is a pattern of mental health
Yes.
dysfunction that goes with them to the job, friends, relationships from their childhood, and how they treat their children. How would you suggest, or can you give some suggestions on mothers dealing with this and their children? Because the mother may be going through RTT. Well, what is she to share and disseminate down to her children to help them cope and heal?
Well, I think the number one thing a mom can do is to set a good example for her kids, take care of herself and prioritize her own self needs, her self care. And that's the first thing. The second thing is not tolerating disrespect from other people, period. A lot of women who are in these relationships refuse to leave them because of the children. And they swear that nothing is happening to the kids. I'm telling you, your children are observing this dysfunctional relationship, whether you know it or not. In my case, there was no conflict as far as, we didn't fight. He was so conflict avoidant, as was I in my codependency. We never fought. There was never any strife, outward appearances of anything as far as that goes. It was all passive aggressive, under the table kind of, maneuvering and emotional twisting and gaslighting. Um, and of course, as I woke up from that delusion, essentially in my healing, I can see instances of things that he directly or indirectly did to the kids. And oddly, I was always aware that he favored one child over the other, to the point where I bent over backwards to make sure the scapegoated child had all of the attention and affection that he needed. Even though the other one got ample attention from her father and from me, I did double duty on the second child, because he was the scapegoat. The narcissist father had no interest in him. And, when all of this crap kind of came to a head with him and I, my son actually has said to me, he said, Mom, I always knew Dad didn't like me. And I was just like, wow, honey, why didn't you ever say that to me? And he said, well, I guess I wasn't really like consciously aware. He said, but it was always a feeling that I had that Dad didn't like me. And he said, and now I know he doesn't even love me, and he never did.
Wow.
And I mean, that is just like heart-wrenching.
Heartbreaking.
Yes. The other child, she was the golden child. She was showered with all of Dad's attention and affection. And they're so similar in temperament, both quiet, introverted types. And he could get her to talk to him when I couldn't get her to talk to me. So there was that kind of weird connection there. And then I recognized a number of times over the years where he actually would use her and triangulate with her against me. Wow. To torture me in some fashion. And at the time it would make me angry, and I would just storm out of the room and get pissed off.
Let me
But
ask
now,
you a question in all transparency. And I know that we have labeled him, but what was your contribution to this? Was it being naive? Was it being vulnerable? Was it low self-esteem?
I'd say all of it. It's all of it.
Wow.
When I was a kid, I was intensely shy. And of course, going through my healing journey, I now have dissected my childhood in ways that I never imagined. In my mind, I grew up in Leave It to Beaverland. Everything was hunky-dory, lovely, loving, etc. Except I'd compartmentalized this other little piece with my sister. And I always knew she was toxic and abusive toward my mother in particular. So my sister was the primary abuser in the home. And I can't tell you how many times I would see growing up my sister being combative with my mother, verbally abusive, calling her names, grabbing her by the hair, slamming her head into the wall, kicking her, spitting on her, whatever.
No, now see, your mother was better than me.
Yeah. And then my mother, there was one incident that has come up in a number of my own sessions where I'm sitting at the kitchen table eating a snack after school, and my mom's doing the dishes. So she's got her back to me at the sink. And my sister came in and she was angry at my dad for something, and he was a typical, 1950s, 1960s dad. He comes home from work, he expects dinner on the table. He wants to, just decompress and watch the news for a few minutes when he'd come in before dinner. So he's sitting there watching TV, trying to be left alone before we eat. And my sister starts ranting at him about some nonsense, and he's trying to ignore her. So he's turning the TV up louder and louder and louder, trying to drown her shrieking at him out. And then next thing I know, I'm sitting there, like eating my sandwich or something. My sister picks up a butcher knife and she's like going toward my dad, like she's going to stab him with this knife. And I'm sitting there, like I'm watching something on TV. It was so unreal. And my mom, looks, does a double take, hits my sister over the head with a skillet and gets her to drop the knife. My mother picks up the knife. My sister departs the scene, runs in her room crying. And my mom's response is to turn to me and say, don't you ever tell your daddy what you just saw. And that was a regular kind of occurrence as I was growing up. And it was always this isolated little weirdness between my mom and my sister, if you will call it that. that my mother protected and kept my dad from knowing because she didn't want him to know. And I think, if he had known, he would have stepped in and done something about it. Maybe, I don't know.
That's
But my mom, she was
that's
also very controlling and very, I wasn't allowed boundaries. I wasn't allowed privacy of any sort. I couldn't speak up. I couldn't talk back. I couldn't object. I just, did what I was
so
told I
the
could.
relationship and the upbringing was completely polar opposite from your sister.
Yeah, she was allowed to just get away with everything, which is why I think my mom was so harsh with me because she was afraid. I think in my mom's mind, she'd raised a brat, not realizing my sister actually was mentally ill. She was a narcissist. She's borderline personality disorder, and she's histrionic personality disorder.
Mm,
And I think my mother, of course, we're talking the 60s, 70s, 80s. There was a different understanding of any
right.
of this stuff, and a different idea of parenting too. Like my parents were older. Um, and so my mom thought my sister was just a brat and she wasn't going to raise another brat. So I was treated in a very harsh manner. But
Oh,
a lot of the things my mom did were really kind of, quite frankly, fucked up.
yeah.
Um,
And how
as
did you
far
break the
as,
cycle with raising your child?
it's funny because I've learned that I always chose to not have that kind of relationship with my kids. I didn't want that relationship that I had with my mother. And it's not to say I didn't have a good relationship with my mom. I loved her very much, and I know she loved me dearly and would never have knowingly hurt me on purpose. She thought truly she was doing something good by being strict with me. um but I chose to not have that relationship with my kids, and I felt like, being a helicopter mom or whatever was exhausting, and that's not my thing. I wanted to give them freedom and foster independence, and let them, think for themselves and encourage that. But, I've also learned through my healing is that even though I was walking the opposite direction in parenting my kids than my mother did, I was still allowing that thing to control the way I parented,
Mm,
where it's better to create your entirely own way of doing things rather than walking the opposite direction just because you wanted something different. It's not enough to just walk away from it. You have to create
absolutely.
something different.
Absolutely.
And that was a mistake that I made because I didn't understand. You know,
Well, I mean, it's a learned behavior, and you were
yeah,
taught one way, and so now
yeah.
you're doing something different. Tell us a little bit about the interviews that you do on your talk show.
Oh yeah. It was a kind of a curiosity when I started it. Just a very informal seat of the pants kind of interview program where I interview other RTT therapists and sometimes coaches about their individual practices and how each of us utilizes RTT in our own unique ways with different applications. I've had people on who work with high caliber athletes to increase their sports performance. I've had an equestrian coach who works with professional grade athletes, tennis coaches, that kind of stuff. And then I've also worked.
USA, did you see the Olympics?
I did watch a bit. And then there's others who work with anxiety, depression, weight loss, menopause, fertility. I talked with a guy that works with folks that have erectile dysfunction, um, all kinds of applications. So we talk about how they use it in their practice and the success stories that they've achieved with clients overcoming their problems using RTT.
That's beautiful. What's the name of the show?
It's Metamorphosis Moments on YouTube.
Metamorphosis Moments on
Mhm.
YouTube. Right?
Yeah.
You're going to check into that. Well, you have covered everything from soup to nuts. Now let's ask you some fun questions because this is my favorite part of the interview.
Pretty heavy stuff. Yeah.
It is pretty heavy stuff. If you could time travel, Tricia, you go back to the past, stay here in the present, or move to the future, where would you land?
Oh gosh, I think I would go back to the past and I would make some changes in how I parented my kids.
Really?
Truly, I would. Yeah.
Okay. If you were an animal, what animal would you be and why?
Mm. I think I would be a dog because I just love dogs. They're such pure, beautiful spirits. They're so full of love. but I wouldn't want to be just any dog. I'd want to be a dog that's loved by people, not mistreated, obviously.
Exactly, exactly. If you were an appliance in the kitchen, what appliance would you be?
Hmm. Gosh. Probably. Hmm. Well, maybe I would just say that I would be a really good blender because it's
Everybody
probably the
wants
one
to
I
be a blender. Everybody wants to be a blender.
really. I just think it's the tool I use the most. I use it every single day, and you can incorporate so many different things in your life into something new and amazing.
I think I want to be the dishwasher.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. I want to keep it hot and steamy, keep it clean, keep it fresh, and be useful.
Hmm. It's
So
a good goal.
I think that would be something that I like to do.
A garbage disposal would be a good thing too, because you could just get
Yeah,
rid of all the crap,
get
make it
rid of all
clean.
the crap.
Yeah.
What would you say to a woman that's struggling right now?
It will get better. It absolutely will. And a lot of clients come to me and they think this is the worst thing possible. But from where I sit, I went through an awful lot of garbage, and I'm here to tell you that it does get better, but you have to put the effort into it. This isn't forever. And I also, in a bizarre way, I'm thankful for the abuses that I've suffered because it's put me exactly where I am today. I wouldn't be the person I am today. I wouldn't be doing the work I'm doing. I wouldn't be out here helping other women in this way if I hadn't gone through what I've been through. So, I mean, I'm never going to say I'm thankful somebody abused me, but, if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. So it's not always going to be this way. It's not always going to be this hard.
Okay. Well, that's definitely encouraging. You're also a speaker coach. And
I'm
you're
not a speaker coach, but I am working toward my first TED Talk.
okay. All right.
Yeah.
So, what do we
I'm
have
working with a speaker coach.
so what do we have to look forward to in your TED Talk?
That's still being formulated at this point, but it's going to be something about my recovery and my journey to talk an inspiring story about resilience and hope for the future. And that's kind of the message that I'm going to convey.
What do you do for fun and recreation?
I'm a gardening addict. If I'm not working, which is, since I live by myself at this time, I'm pretty much work all the time. I'm a workaholic. But when I'm not working, I want to be outside. I feel like a caged animal when I'm in the house, and I am outside. I am doing like crazy chores in the yard. And right now I'm working on moving a pile of dirt that I just got 10 cubic yards of compost delivered on Friday. And I've been gradually chunking away at moving compost into my flower beds and creating new flower beds and tending my vegetables and deadheading my flowers. I mean, this is fun to me. Some people
Yep.
hate
Well,
it. I
that's
love
my
it.
daughter. My daughter is an amazing costume designer and makeup artist. And now she has taken on the gardening. She is
Yeah.
just the enthusiast. She came yesterday
Yeah.
and stuck her finger in the dirt of my pots. And she says, "This is unacceptable. The dirt is dry." Her eyes got all big, and I was like, she was having a moment there. So it can be exciting. And then I got out there and started doing some work, and it is labor intensive too. So kudos
It's
to you.
therapeutic. It's excellent exercise. I've never been a person that loves to just exercise for exercise sake. I will never be a gym rat.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't run because, like the ice cubes fall out of my cocktail. But if there's exercise with a purpose, moving a pile of mulch, that's to me, I love it. It's a great core workout. There's a purpose to it. I'm getting beautiful flowers. I'm growing amazing tomatoes, whatever it is. I love it. And I think there's something just innately human about spending time in nature, listening to the birds, feeling the breeze in your hair, the sun on your face.
Looking at the other creatures that God
Yes.
has created outside of us that
Yeah.
are nonverbal.
Getting stung by hornets, all the fun things,
All
right?
those fun things. Well, thank you so much for being here with me on the edge. You have been a wealth of information. Brains, really, assess the situation. You may not be able to change the person, but what you can do is do the internal work and change yourself. You don't have to be subjected to that. Be aware of it, document it, the tools. If you are in a severely abusive relationship, there are groups, there are organizations, there are people like Tricia that are able to help you to figure out what your next step might be. Love on yourself. Loving yourself is not an outside job, it's an inside job.
That's right.
And so you really have to be committed to doing the work, and you deserve love.
Yeah.
All of us deserve love, honesty, respect.
Everyone deserves it.
That's right.
And I always tell my clients, if you don't take care of yourself and respect yourself, how do you expect someone else would do that for you?
Right. And they're not going to do it to the level that you do for yourself.
Yeah.
So get in there, do the work. Tell them, my brains, how to get in contact with you, how to follow you on social media, as well as to tune into the podcast or the video.
I can be found on Instagram, on Facebook, and of course at the website at triciachandler.com and YouTube for Metamorphosis Moments.
Well, brains, let me find my post off. It's right here. I want you to go in and love, like, share, and subscribe to both. Love, like, share, and subscribe. Share this information, rewind it, think about it, process it, because the only person that can do you truly is you. Bye, Tricia.
Thank you so much, April. It's been a pleasure talking today.